Now, when you started working with Oliver Hardy then, which happened because of the leg of lamb incident, how did you two fellows, did you figure out anything that you thought you might be doing, an approach to what you would do in comedy? The Laurel and Hardy films was such a trademark in terms of the characters you evolved and the kind of comedy that you evolved and the way you worked together.
Well,
one would hardly think this was an accident.
We figured that, well, it was. Everything just happened.
Uh-huh.
Like my hair and all that stuff cut short, you know. And that was all by accident. And
well, how did some of these things happen by accident? Now, you told me how you got together by accident.
Well, for instance, my short hair standing up. We decided that we would make a convict picture. But we wanted to make it look real, so we decided we were lifers in the picture that would shave our hair off. Which we did. We were bald-headed. Which looked very good for the character. They believed it.
Yes.
So, of course, for the next picture, our hair hadn't grown back.
So that's how you got your
So at the preview, when I took my hat off and the short hair appeared, they'd seen me with the, the part in the middle. They got a laugh, which says, we better keep that in. Anything for a laugh.
Oh, that's fine. Well, what about his bangs now? You said something about his, one time you had thought that you would do this purposely to put...
we were just fiddling around trying to... That was when I was directing with Clyde Cook.
Now, what about his mustache?
Well, I never did like that. Everybody was wearing the heavies, all wore big mustaches and big eyebrows. Trying to get away from that type. And we slowed down in our shooting in the speed of the film.
What do you mean you slowed down?
Well, they used to shoot at 12, so we went to normal, 14 and 15 or 16. We acted normally. We stopped to take, to show the reaction. And normally, in those days, they'd take a pie in the face and they'd jump up and run and make funny gestures and what have you.
As the Keystone.
But here, as we got our pie, we deliberately stopped and you could read the man's thoughts.
But you purposely did this in order to differentiate yourselves from other comedians of the time.
We tried to be different. So we'd go against all rules or regulations or anything else of those times. And speed and everything else. We too felt that the slower we went, the less gags we'd have to work out. The less material. We wouldn't use so much film.
You had a long history of abbreviation, starting with your name, and now you're working on not much material, making it last longer, too.
Well, I mean, making it, getting the most out of it.
I appreciate that. How was it decided that you were the one that usually got him in all the trouble?
Well, it was just the two characters that we felt the big guy knew less than the other guy, but wouldn't allow the little guy to know it.
What else did you do now? You didn't resort to big shoes. You did have hats that didn't fit.
Once in a while we wore big shoes. Whatever happened to come along. We'd wear big overalls and things like that.
You made a number of two-reelers together. Many, many two-reelers.
Oh, yeah.
And at the time that the talkies came in, I believe, you correct me about this if I'm wrong, I believe that the motion picture industry from the distributing point of view began to run in second full-length pictures, and the two-reelers certainly began to suffer. They didn't hold up.
Well, we used to make the picture whatever length it was good in. In other words, we started out to make a two-reeler, but if it ran over to 3 or 3.5 reels or even 4, and it previewed, and if we thought cutting anything would suffer the picture, it kept the length. So they practically became featurettes.
One of the things that I've read recently has been that you and Hardy, the Laurel and Hardy films, were perhaps the last of the two-reelers to be able to stand on their own feet, that most of them had gone by the wayside, and your two-reelers continued long after most of them had passed out of the picture.
Well, I think we were fortunate in sticking to our silent reel methods when talkies came in. We only said enough to to motivate what we were doing. Everybody started to talk their heads off for no reason at all. Line after line of dialogue that had no meaning or bed. They were forgetting the principle of the comic.
For the sheer novelty of being able to speak from the film.
That was it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them couldn't talk like we can't talk. We're not talking comedians, or weren't rather. So our dialogue was very static.
Talking made about 1932?
1929.
1929?
Yeah. It was
Which
called
film was that?
Unaccustomed as We Are.
In 1929.
I think it was one of the first two-reelers made in sound.
What about your first full-length talkie?
That was started as a two-reeler and ended up in 4. And after the preview, there was nothing to cut out, and Roach says, well, look, I'm tired of giving these 4 reels of comedy at the 2-reel price. We'll add a couple more reels and make a feature of it. So that's how Pardon Us became a feature length.
And when was that released, Mr. Laurel?
Oh, no, I couldn't think.
It's not fair to ask you that.
No,
I'll tell you why
really
I'm asking. Unashamedly, I tell you that I was in love and crazy about Laurel and Hardy as a kid. I have always been. And had seen many of your silent films. And I lived in a town called Gary, Indiana. And though I had gone to Chicago on weekly jaunts with my parents from time to time to see films there, and they had talkies in Chicago at Balaban and Katz long before we had them in Gary, I was very much in love with Laurel and Hardy, and I had misgivings about seeing them in their first talkie, Pardon Us, which was the first feature-length talkie I'd seen. I don't remember ever seeing you in a two-reeler talkie.
Oh, yeah, we made quite a few.
But I didn't remember that.
Oh.
And I remember we had a theater in Gary called the Palace Theater. We had vaudeville there, too, out of Chicago.
I played.
And I remember how when I bought my ticket for this movie, I almost ran out of the theater because I was scared to death that the love that I had for Laurel and Hardy might be dissipated by hearing their voices. And I sank way low in my seat. And I remember how I ran all the way home. I lived about maybe 8 blocks from there. I ran all the way home from there to exclaim to my mother, who was home at the time, that it was all right, that I loved them, and it was still all right. I was saved.
Yeah, a lot of them fell by the wayside.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
True.
But I can remember as if it were yesterday, and the seat I was in, the theater even, when I went to see Laurel and Hardy in the first talkie that I knew of, and how frightened I was.
And they weren't too good either on account of being made on records, you know.
Right. Right.
The sound was very bad.
The reason I've told you at length about my own feelings of fear in going to the movies to see you into a talkie was because it has occurred to me with many of the people whom I've interviewed, as it does now with you, that it's probably difficult to realize how intimately you become a part of the lives of millions of people who live and love you.
One of the family.
And you don't know about it, really.
Right. I've just been getting so many fan letters on account of poor Babe. And some of them are expressed beautiful. It's remarkable, the love that they have for us. It's amazing.
And I imagine this is a heartwarming experience for yourself to know that you've been able to do this in a lifetime.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Your wife had just mentioned to me, for example, as an illustration of this kind of feeling that an audience has for personalities such as yourself, of a young man, I believe it was, who had wanted you. He was ill or something. What was that story?
Oh,
Can you tell me
poor
that?
chap. He was in England. I got this letter and it read that he was only expected to live 2 or 3 days at the most, but he wanted to let us know how much Laurel and Hardy had meant to him, all the happiness it given him in his life. He just wanted to say goodbye and thank us. I really flipped over that one. I felt terrible.
Yes.
Nothing you could say. I couldn't write the guy back.
No.
You know, there was nothing you could possibly do or say.
Not too long ago, I think, as you reminded me yourself, was in 1947 that you appeared in England at a command performance.
Right.
with Hardy, for the Laurel and Hardy team. What sort of a thing did you do for this?
We did a sketch.
Mm-hmm. Who else was on that bill? Do you recall some of the people that were there?
Oh, Gracie Fields was on the show. Most of the acts were star acts. Over in England, I don't think anybody would know of them over here.
Were you the only representatives from this country that you recall?
Yes, I believe we were.
And according to the information I have, Laurel and Hardy received perhaps the greatest ovation that any act had received.
We did, yes.
From them.
We did.
Now, you have been very, very popular and are still amazingly popular in foreign countries with your films. How do you account for this, Mr. Laurel?
I frankly don't know. I really don't. It's amazing. Still today, they take about 3 of our 2 reelers and they put titles to put them together, and the main title, new main title. And those pictures run for 5 and 6 months in one house. I've recently received letters to this effect from Germany and different places. And it's the only picture showing, and they stand in line.
Now, you don't have any idea as to why your comedy should have that appeal today to the foreign audience?
I frankly don't.
You don't?
I really don't.
In talking with people like Buster Keaton, for example, Mr. Keaton, with some of the other people whom I've interviewed, have felt that the silent films, and particularly the comedians of those days, were speaking a kind of universal language.
Well, that's true.
And in so doing, not only were understood by peoples all over the world, but many of the things that they did were timeless. I wondered if in the concocting of your sequences, if in figuring an approach to your comedy, any of this kind of thing, the universality of the language, the timelessness of the gags, had any motivation. Did you ever think in those terms?
Well, I used to put special gags in for England, for instance, because the other foreign countries, there's nothing I could do about it. That I'd put in different pieces of dialogue that would appeal, I knew,
to the English audience.
To the English audiences, and yet made them clear enough for here.
Now, the story ideas that you worked on, did they originate with you? Did you write most of the stories?
Well, I wouldn't take credit for. No one man can make a picture. That's silly. No, I had some very fine boys worked with me, and we all like a happy family. We'd all have ideas. It was noble. No one thought one was any better than the other, and we'd work out a script and get to shooting it as quick as we could. I don't believe in sitting for weeks and months on a comedy picture, comedy especially. It can't be done, and especially this type of comedy.
Now, were most of the things, did you have a general idea as to the situation and then work it out in front of the camera?
We did a lot what we call off the cuff.
Even in later
Sometimes
years?
we'd start on a script and suddenly we'd come up and we'd forget the script and keep on going.
And your cameramen knew to keep on grinding the camera?
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Does any of these films come back to you now as a film that you enjoyed working with or working on more than another?
Well, frankly, I'm so disappointed with the way they're edited, and the commercials are stuck in here and there in the middle of a gag. And
you mean on television today?
Yeah, the questions are cut out and the answers are just given, and you don't know what it's all about.
Right.
So, I don't know. I just lost interest in looking at them.
But in terms of the career that you have had, and this has been an illustrious and wonderful career, do you yourself look back on a film that you feel was your best, or that you enjoyed working on most, or you think really hit the grade as you would like it to have done?
Well, I think one of our best was Frau Diablo. Another cute picture was Bonnie Scotland.
Right.
Babes in Toyland.
Right.
And I like the Bohemian Girl.
A few years back, weren't you in Europe for a while?
Yeah.
Were you working in Europe with Hardy?
Yeah, we're playing the vaudeville houses. The
Vaudeville
variety
houses over there.
The Moss Empires.
Mm-hmm. Many of us would wonder and wish with all our hearts that you and Hardy, while Mr. Hardy was still living, were continuing to make films here, and felt very bad deep down that for some reason you were doing vaudeville in Europe rather than working here again. Were you working in Europe because you were not able to be active here?
Well, we had some very bad experiences after leaving Roach. We had with Roach more freedom. We could do what we wanted and make it how we wanted. And with the other places like Metro and 20th Century Fox, the story was written, cut and dried, and it had to be shot per script. And you couldn't...
no spontaneity for you to work with?
No, nothing. And the routines and gags are all of what we'd previously done. And the story in back of them didn't permit them to get the best out of it. So it was a disgusting affair to us all the way through. So we were happy when the contract was called out.
Did you make any films in Europe?
We made one. That was the last one. That was a sad affair.
Why? What?
Well, there was everything wrong. First, they started out with French writers, and they brought in Italian writers, and we took a couple of writers with us over there. So there were three nationalities all trying them. The sense of humor is entirely different.
Right.
And then we came to shoot. We had part Italian cast and part French cast. They spoke in their own language. We only spoke English, so nobody knew what each other was talking about. Then we were just hoping that we were answering the right question. Then on top of that, I got very ill, went into hospital, was operation.
Right.
So I came out of there weighing 114 pounds after 160. So I could hardly stand up to finish the picture up, and it was a mess all the way around. Just unfortunate. So we were very happy they didn't get much showing here.
Yes.
We were a bit embarrassed over it, naturally.
Well, how have you managed to use your time? What are you doing these days, Mr. Laurel?
Just correspondence.
You're not actively engaged in any phase of the business?
No.
Are any of your family still living over here?
My sister over in England.
Is still in England?
And cousins and what have you, nephews.
Mm-hmm. And you have a daughter who is
here? I have a daughter and two grandchildren.
Two grandchildren, that's wonderful. Are they all here in Los Angeles?
They're in Tarzana.
Tarzana, out in the valley. That's wonderful. Do you ever get out to visit them?
Once in a while, then they come over here.
I'd like to ask you about reading, for example. Do you get to read much these days, or do you enjoy... what do you do for a hobby or for outside interest now, for example, other than your correspondence?
Well, television, of course, is the...
the savior.
My only connection with show business.
Right.
And, of course, my tape recorder and what have you. And my few friends.
The other day when we were all struck with this untimely passing of your longtime partner, Mr. Hardy, I had read, I didn't know at the time, I had read that you had not felt well enough to be able to attend the funeral, and apparently had not been there. I take it that your own health has not been too good recently.
No, it hasn't. No.
You have no other plans for yourself at the present time?
No. No, I'm in retirement now, I'm afraid.
I suppose since Mr. Hardy's death, you have received phone calls and a good deal of correspondence of condolence and sympathy from fans and people you've never known.
Oh, yes. One thing I've always done is answer every fan letter. Not always a letter. if it was necessary for a letter, yes. But always acknowledged their letters and sent pictures. I've attended to all our fan mail personally.
Yourself?
Yeah, and in autographing them, I've included their name and everything.
Very
for
considerate.
all the years, all through the years, even in a crowd. And I think that it brought a closeness to people. They felt that they were our friend, we were their friends.
Right.
And the minute they saw us, absolutely sense. Hello, Stan, you know. Hello, Bill. Hello, George. We were just one of the family.
Yes.
I have so many, many letters where they frame even a little postcard hanging in the home. And not only from children, but grown-ups.
I was just asking whether or not that I had supposed that following Mr. Hardy's death that you had received correspondence from a number of people, and I wanted to know whether or not you had a letter that might typify the feeling that seemed to be expressed in most of them. And you've just handed me this letter that was written from Kansas City by Mr. Ralph Trower. That is a wonderful letter, and I'm sure that I would join him in saying no more than a fitting tribute to a great comedy team, and certainly to a wonderful person in yourself, Mr. Laurel. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for permitting me these few moments with you in your lovely home here at Malibu to go over with you some of the whys and wherefores, and to thank you again for being with me on Turning Point.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you very much.
God bless you.